being our gracious host.
Thank you so much.
And have a
Thank you.
her or me. We want to thank her for being our gracious host.
Well, it was mostly our gracious staff and volunteers, so thank you, and we'll hang this proudly. I want to say when you come back next time, we have big plans, and there might be some more things for you to do, but I think there'll be plenty for you to do this afternoon too, so thanks very much.
Thank you, Jamie.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'd like to take this time today to introduce a new friend of mine, someone who I've talked to for years, but finally I've actually met in person, and a new friend of FLA. It's Kerry Post. She's the Deputy Secretary of Cultural Affairs, Historic Resources, and Library and Information Services, and she's a really big friend to Florida's cultural resources, for sure. Please welcome her right now.
Thank you, John. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Welcome back.
Thank you. It was truly my honor and privilege to be with y'all last night, too, with the Board of Directors of FLA. And I really have to say I was also, aside from the incredible dialogue and having the opportunity to connect, I'm a second-generation native Floridian. And I must confess, I've always loved lighthouses, but I was very, very impressed and delighted to hear and learn of the conversations of everybody there. But I was also very moved at the number of military veterans that were in the room. And I really wanted to acknowledge, can I ask everybody here, for those of you all that are veterans, U.S. will you please raise your hand? That's amazing. I want to thank you on behalf of the state of Florida. Thank you so much for your service. The freedoms that we enjoy today as Americans and as Floridians is absolutely to your efforts, and I just really want to say thank you very much. I saw in World War II, at Korea, and Vietnam, and the Gulf Wars. Again, I want to thank you very, very much for that. So now to the business at hand. Again, my name is Kerry Post. I'm Deputy Secretary of State at the Florida Department of State. I oversee 3 of the 6 divisions there. There's the Division of Historical Resources, which I think is one y'all are primarily interested in. There's 2 bureaus there. There's the Bureau of Historic Preservation and the Bureau of Archaeological Research. And the Bureau of Historic Preservations are the ones who give all the historic preservation grants. So we had some interesting conversations last night too on grants. The Division of Cultural Affairs is also, I think, perhaps of interest of you all because they offer a grant program. We've had very much success in the last couple of years with the Florida legislature, again, due to our industry partners, in funding our grant programs. I think this year we're at a total of, I want to say, almost $60 million in grants that we re-grant to everybody else through actually all 3 divisions, which is a lot. Cultural affairs, their grants are important because they can fund like your museums, if you have exhibits, you're bringing speakers, programming, things like that. So those grant programs are also important. So again, I think I have the best job in state government, and I'm just delighted that I happen to be here. I do have to scoot out right after my remarks. I have meetings in Miami, so again, it has truly been a pleasure to be with you all. I was asked, I think on your agenda it was Rob Bendis was supposed to be your speaker today. He was the director of the Division of Historical Resources. He is no longer with the agency, but I'm delighted to announce Dr. Tim Parsons has been appointed by the Secretary of State as the interim director of the Division of Historical Resources. We've had conversations. He is very supportive of lighthouses, and I think he's going to be a welcome addition to the team. He comes from our compliance and review section. So again, Dr. Tim Parsons will be a name that y'all will probably be seeing as well. I think the primary reason that we were asked to come today is in Florida statutes, and I think there was a link sent in y'all's agenda to a statute that refers to, obviously, wonderful lighthouses, the study, the preservation, and the funding. And as you all are probably familiar, I carried this on the plane. This is my luggage to go over. But in 2002, a study was done for the Florida lighthouses. There were 2 architectural firms that came together to work on this. How many of you all were involved in this back in 2002? Can I get a sense of anybody raise their hand? Was anybody, a couple folks involved? Got a few. What we're talking about is how to request some funding to update this study. And I can go into that in just a minute. We had some very, very engaging dialogue yesterday on that with the board. But let me I want to go back to the statute and kind of refer to, there's several aspects, but one that I think is important that talks about that all historically significant lighthouses are nominated for inclusion on the National Register of Historic Places. As I understand, there are about 30 lighthouses in Florida, and all y'all that were here last night can't answer this. But, as you know, how many lighthouses do you think are on the National Register of Historic Places? Anybody want to throw out a number? Oh, come on.
21.
Ding, 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 ding. And you were there last night. But the right answer, absolutely. 21 of the 30. So I just wanted to read them really quick so everyone is aware of all of the lighthouses that are listed on the National Register of Historic Places. There's Hillsborough Inlet, Cape Florida, Fowey Rocks, St. John's, Pensacola, Cape St. George, Crooked River, Cape Sandblast, Sanibel, Boca Grande, Sand Key, Alligator Reef, American Shoals, Kerry's Fort, Sombrero Key, Amelia Island, Jupiter Inlet, Anclote Key, St. Augustine, Ponce de Leon, and St. Mark's. And as I understand it, Gasparilla Lighthouse has now been deemed eligible. So they're not quite on the register. They got one more step to go. So it'll almost be 22. But I think you got a good bunch. I mean, we still got a little more work to do, but I think that's pretty good. So again, we want to be your partners in this. So if we can be of any assistance for those of you who are through the process, we are certainly happy to help. So I think that was one part of the statute. The other is working together, and it's going to take a team to get this study refunded. Again, we had some good dialogue, and I think based on the conversations last night, I think a good first step would first be to kind of just update this and see it, because we all kind of know that a lot has been done since 2002. There's been a lot of tremendous improvement. This was a tremendous report. I mean, you got color photos. I mean, and I understand this document also helped lighthouses secure additional funding to address a lot of the issues that were raised in here. So what we had talked about last night, and again, I want this to be interactive. If there's other comments, I'll go on in a minute to hear from, I would like to hear from y'all. But focusing on updating this would be kind of our primary thing to where we are today. And as I understand it, there's also a number of lighthouses that are kind of known that are kind of struggling, that haven't been as successful in getting the funding or for restoration and rehab, and may actually be very threatened for a number of reasons. And that's kind of a group that's kind of known. And so we may also want to focus our efforts on that. So we talked then too a little bit about how we would go about putting funding in the budget. As you all know, the legislative session is, it is in, even as I should say this week, but it started 2 weeks ago. And even though we can be successful at having money put in our legislative budget requests, by the end of the day, it could be gone and not make it on the final list. And so that is where, as the Department of State, we need our industry partners to work together to try to make sure that that funding, once it's on there, stays on there. That does get funded at the end of the day, doesn't get vetoed, but that requires broad legislative support. So I was really happy to hear, as part of your new strategic plan, There's a number of groups that are being formed to address the marketing and membership and, kind of some really focused goals, and that governance and working with the legislature is one of those areas of focus. And so we look forward to working together. I believe John is your fearless leader in that realm, and certainly has the ear. I mean, Chairman Ingram is the head of the Appropriations Committee in the House, who happens to be from Pensacola. So we talked also last night, and again, I'm sure you all will be hearing more about this, the importance of making sure you all know, and your local legislators, your representatives and your senators know the value that your lighthouses bring to your communities. We had some great dialogue. We need to talk about the number of visitors, environmental impact, economic impacts, and educational impacts. Those are all very, very important for legislators. They need to hear those things as much as we talk about the history and heritage, because that is critically important. But to our legislative leaders and to the governors, it's about jobs, it's about the economy, and it's about education, and that's kind of the vernacular that we need to be illustrating in addition to the history and the heritage. So we look forward to working with you all as your partner in this. Like I said, we believe it's critically important to move ahead, and again, I'm so excited to see so many people here representing the Lighthouse community, and again, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I would like to open the floor. Are there any questions, comments for me as we go forward, and again, we look forward to working together with you. Chris?
When we click on the link, there are two different versions of that statute. Which one is the current version? How do we know?
The current version, the link on the agenda goes back to the 2003 statute.
Okay.
Essentially, you need to click on, select the years to 2015. Which is the latest statute, which I'm happy to share, which essentially, substantively, the statute language really hasn't changed. But, it still talks about the National Register, it still talks about the study, but the difference is the organizations that are named in there, like the Department of Community Affairs, that doesn't exist anymore in state government. That has been changed. So again, it now went to, there were like 2 paragraphs, the current one has 1. And so again, but substantively, the language of what it says to do has not changed. So like I said, I'm happy to send the link to y'all for that, but again, all you can also do is just select on the year.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Yes?
I noticed Loggerhead Key wasn't on your list of national register. That's in a national park, right? Loggerhead, is that a national park?
Yes.
I would think it has to be, it would be for the structure itself, just because it's in the area. Because it's not listed as an individual site on the National Register. But I can certainly look into it and see if there's more we can do.
They have a Lighthouse group for that lighthouse, because they're not in Keys Lighthouse, or they're in FLA, I guess they're on.
I can look into it and work with Chris or yourself. Do you represent Loggerhead? So I was just going to say, I'm happy to look into it and see what we can do. But this was, I had my team pull, this was kind of the latest and greatest list. And what's interesting is since 2010, there have only been 5 lighthouses on the register. All the rest were done prior, going back to the 70s. So there have really only been 5 been added on there since then. But again, we're here as a resource to help you. And again, I'm happy to look into Loggerhead if there's an interest. Kerry.
I think it may be listed under Dry Tortugas if you're looking for reference.
Okay. And maybe it's just not specifically named?
Well, I think the lighthouse itself, the name that's in our lighthouse book that we published several years ago is Dry Tortugas Light.
Okay. So maybe that's it, it's a name?
I don't know, and I don't know whether it has the designation or not.
Well, that would also apply to Fort Jefferson Light too, being in the park.
Pardon?
Fort Jefferson Light would also be in the park.
Yeah, it's also in the park. There are 2 lighthouses there. The one on the fort.
Okay, well, I'll look in, that gives me a little more information to look into it, so. And again, does anybody have any other questions? I see, way in the back.
Do you mind if individual Lighthouse organizations communicate with your office in regard of preservation matters?
I would say my door is always open. I'd be happy to speak with you. Typically, that would go to the Division of Historical Resources, but I can tell you if you've not gotten response or you want additional information or it's not timely, I am happy to be the conduit to get you whatever information or connections you're looking for.
Well, since Mr. Bendis is no longer there and it's Mr. Patterson?
Tim Parsons, Dr. Tim Parsons.
Okay, so we could go directly to his office rather than come to you, I suppose.
You could, but I'm happy to give you my card and have it route through me. I'm happy to do that.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yes.
What could help your office for people who are applying? Is there any particular thing that they're looking for? Or I know one of the things on grants is people don't follow directions, but other than that, is there any kind of thing that they're looking for?
I would say, I mean, probably the biggest thing is there's a tendency to put too much information in grants, and so the salient information kind of gets diluted. And so I would say the most succinctly and concise way to state your message, so there's no interpretation, and it makes it, I mean, I'm sure many of you too, I mean, I've overseen grant programs, I've been a grant program, I'm a panelist in my life, and it's, when you read it, you're trying to paint a picture for the reviewer. So make it very, very clear when you're writing, aside from providing all the information that's required, but also help paint the picture without, being too verbose, but paint the picture of what you're trying to accomplish so it's easy for a reviewer to go, this is an important project, we need to fully fund it.
That really helps. It really does. Not to go on and on.
Exactly, the TMI. So again, it has been a privilege. Did someone else, did I see it? Okay. It has been a privilege to be with y'all. I mean, we look forward to work with you again with the new interim director of the Division of Historical Resources. Myself, sir, I will give you my card in the back. As a matter of fact, I'll put a few on the table as well. For anybody, I'm happy to be the conduit, particularly during this transitional time. And so again, it's a pleasure to be here. I did see one more.
I just want to say on behalf of all of us, thank you for your interest.
Oh, it's well, thank you.
Again, I'm just going to follow up with her words and thank Kerry for coming out. I'd like to present her with a plaque from FLA.